every successful person got there by going through tough times. Success is a hard-ass teacher who likes to knock you around along that journey. You know, it takes real guts to not give up and keep going. We'll hear stories about failures and how these leaders flip the script to create success. I'm John Schultz. Join me and let's discover how success is never really overnight. Welcome to the John Schultz podcast. We have an amazing guest today, Salim Ramji from BlackRock, which is a terrific company. He's Senior Managing Director and Global Head of iShares and Index Investments since 2019. And what freaked me out, and I still can't believe it, is he's overseeing $5.6 trillion in total, and for iShares, $2.9 trillion. I mean, there's a T in that number, which is incredible. And iShares is part of the BlackRock family. It specializes in exchange-traded funds, engineered to help you meet your investment goals, which we all need and want that insight. You help 100 million investors, which is incredible. It's like, I know with Facebook, with users, it's like those numbers are staggering with how you do that in the investment business. 2 decades in and around asset management, formerly head of BlackRock U.S. Wealth Advisory business and corporate strategy prior to that. Senior partner at McKinsey & Company, consulting, asset management. That's sort of interesting how that came together. A law degree at University of Cambridge, born in Tanzania and grew up in Canada. Welcome and thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
It's great to be here, John. I've been a big fan of your show and I've loved listening to it. And so
Thank you.
It's an honor to be a guest.
I love that. Thank you so much. All right. So as we all know who listens to this podcast, it's the myth of overnight success. And we want to learn about the person because a lot of times in business, we define ourselves about what we do. And I just think there's so much more to all of us than that. And getting to know someone is always a great thing. And we start out, on this show when you're young. So what did you want to be when you grew up as a kid?
So I as you noted, I grew up in Canada, and like every good Canadian, I grew up wanting to be a professional hockey player. I was a terrible hockey player. I tried it for a bit, and I was a goalie. Shortly before I was cut from the hockey team, my hero growing up was a guy named Ken Dryden, who was the goalie for the Montreal Canadiens for a number of years. And shortly before being cut from the hockey team, my coach had pointed out to me that Ken Dryden was both a goalie, but he also went to law school. And so maybe I should think of a fallback career if the professional hockey thing didn't quite work out. It never did work out. I was enthusiastic about it, but I was always pretty bad. But I ended up, I don't know if I ended up going to law school because Ken Dryden also went to law school or because, I was following a different path. But that was certainly my dream at the age of 9.
Yeah, I always say it's so great to be part of sports or, whatever you want to do as a young person. You get to learn teamwork and life skills and how to get along, right? And not just make it all about you, which is why I love.
No, and you can be enthusiastic about something even if you're not very good at it.
Exactly.
I certainly was enthusiastic about it, and I was, by all accounts, not very good at it. So
that's good though. At least you tried. My thing was soccer. I thought I was good at it, but obviously I was never going to be able to get to the next level. Okay, so obviously that's a nice dream to have, and the law school thing. We know you ended up doing that. But how do you feel your parents influenced you when you were growing up? I think that's just such an important question to ask, and love to hear it from you.
Yeah, I think my parents influenced me in at least a couple of ways. One of them was just on the importance of getting a good education. Neither of my parents went to college, neither of them finished high school, but they were very adamant about the need to go to college, even though, and they didn't really care which college. It could be any college, but just the importance of that, I think, was quite profound to them, even though they didn't know what it was, but they knew it was a ticket to financial security.
Right.
And I think the financial security was also something that was taught to me. Some of it was through firsthand experience. It was the early 80s and there was a recession and things were downwardly mobile for a period of time. But I do remember even with, they had lots of loans and interest rates were in the teens at that point. My mother would always put away a little bit of money into the equivalent of a 401k plan. And it might have been $100 or it might have been a small amount of money. But that was always a signal that times may be tough, but there's, good hope ahead. And so I always liked the idea of investing being a sign of hope because you're betting on a future and you're betting on the future being better. So both of those things I think were deep into me. The idea that going to college is a good thing, and financial security, which I think is very tied into that, is a really important thing, particularly if you've lived through the opposite of that, which for different periods I had.
I love your mom. I love that you learned that. That's amazing. It's amazing, like the little things that stick with us through our lives and would define us on how we move forward. So you went to college, you did it. Amazing, right? Big feat for the family. So can you tell us how you became interested in the field of finance? I know that your mother gave you these little insights, but still, that doesn't mean you're going to go into the field. And payments, and how did you start your career and what track did you take?
Well, my first job, and I guess I'm on my, fourth career right now at BlackRock, but my first job out of law school was I ended up, I wanted to go work at the World Bank. And you couldn't just get a job at the World Bank. You needed some field experience. And so what I ended up doing was I worked in a field of microfinance and ended up doing field work in the north of Pakistan. And so this was a poor country, and this was the poorest region of a poor country. And the idea behind this organization that I was part of was that you gave out small loans to people who were starting businesses. It could be like a chicken hatchery or like an apricot, kind of market. And these would be loans of like $1
Wow.
in its equivalent, or $2. And you'd teach people how to save and how to invest. And many of these folks were victims of predatory lending in the region. And so you could teach community-based kind of banking practices. And so I sort of stumbled on finance, I'd say, I don't want to say by accident, but kind of by accident. I was really interested in economic development. But I could see, even for a very, very poor segment of the population, it could have a transformative impact to their lives and livelihoods. And so that always stuck with me. And I got really interested, I think, in finance. Perhaps because of that. I ended up being a corporate lawyer, but I do, work with banks, and I'd work in finance and securitization. And then all the work at McKinsey I did was all with asset managers and with wealth managers until I joined BlackRock.
So, I heard you say something which I wrote down, and it's unbelievable quote. What's the point of what you're doing? Why are you doing it? And that's such an important question to ask to get you motivated. So, it seems like you wanted to be in economic development, and that quote, obviously, you wanted to feel purpose, right? Economic development is having a purpose of helping people. But what were some of the challenges? I mean, you're over in Pakistan. What were some of the challenges you had to get through? And does the purpose actually drive you to stay where you are longer? Or does it, drive you in other ways?
Yeah, it's it was working in a very rural part of Pakistan was strange. I'd never been there. My family's historically, before Tanzania, from India. And so this is a totally different part of the world. And a lot of the businesses we were helping start were businesses that were empowering women. And so one of the challenges was how to convince typically the men in the family to allow women to take out loans, start savings programs, open their own businesses. And that had, cultural and practical kind of points. And it wasn't just me. There was a group of other folks there who were from Pakistan. There were men and women in our organization around it. But just it was a cultural change. Would probably be a understatement. But I do think, John, to your broader point about purpose, I don't think I defined it back then. It was just like, what's the point of what you're doing, and can you see the impact of what you're doing, was kind of how I thought about it. But it's something I think about today in the job that I have. And at the beginning, you threw out some really big numbers in the trillions of dollars, and certainly that's one measure of how we think about BlackRock, or how I think about iShares or index investing. But the real measure that I pay a lot of attention to is $50,000 or $55,000, which is the average account size of the average index investor at BlackRock. Now, it's held through all of our partner firms, wealth managers, and direct platforms. We don't have a direct-to-consumer business. But I think about the average person who's investing in our funds isn't wildly wealthy. They're saving in their 401k plans. They're often buying an ETF for the first time. And so it's, how do you get a sense of purpose by helping people invest for the first time? Now, they're better off than a farmer in the north of Pakistan is, but a lot of folks are still investing and wanting to invest for the first time. And I think that there's a strong ethos of purpose, for me at least, in what I do. And I think across the whole firm, I think that's also true.
Amazing. So has there ever been a time, I mean, you said you're on your fourth career, it's been an amazing one. Has there ever been a time where you couldn't find a purpose and realized you needed a change? Like, because you can start out feeling one thing and move to another. Is that been something
I think
is that what drives you to make your changes in your career?
Not always. Look, I ended up going to law school. I practiced as a lawyer for a couple of years as well. My main insight from doing that is I didn't like being a lawyer, and then I switched careers to do something else. But I don't switch and change quickly. Part of purpose, I think, is finding it, and I think part of finding it is a lot of, at least in my opinion, a lot of grueling hard work and labor to get to what that thing is. I don't think it just magically. A sense of purpose, I don't think, just magically falls on you, or it's not just a word on a poster. But I think it's trying to find deeper meaning in what you do and trying to connect that in terms of how you're helping other people. Could be your clients, could be your customers around it. But that in itself is a journey.
Yeah.
And so I'm not a big, when people say, follow your passion, I'm not necessarily a big believer in that. I'm a big believer in find your passion. And I think finding your passion is itself a journey. It doesn't just happen overnight. And sometimes you have to hit a lot of dead ends until you find what really drives you and what really can define your purpose. So I think, I'm a big believer in purpose, but I think that purpose is itself a journey. It's not just something, it's not an impulse. It's not something that, magically falls down from the sky or from a poster, but it's a journey of discovery and of learning and of hard work. And I think when you get it, it's magical. And if you try to do all those things and you don't get it, you probably need to switch and do something else. Yeah.
It's funny. I equate it to flow. There's because we're never going to like everything we do. I mean, there's all parts of what we do that, we may not feel that flow, but I know when I'm in flow on a project or something that we're creating at Onyx Equities, which is my company.
Yeah.
I lose time, or I can't believe, the ideas that come out of me in a flow state. So I think that's like, how you sort of find it.
No, that's a great way to describe it.
Yeah.
And the thing about flow, at least in my own interpretation of it, is that it's not constant. It's not every day is like that. But if you can find a job or find a firm or find a role that you're in where you're able to experience that from time to time, like, it makes some of the mundane bits better, and it really, I think, it requires a journey, because you can't just like not have it one day and then give up and go do a different job, or be frustrated about it. Part of it is just really working at it and working through the difficult periods to get to the flow, as you talked about.
100%. I agree. So you've lived, worked, studied. I mean, if you really look at where you've been and what you've done in so many different places, uprooting yourself to go and do what you're, following your flow, finding your passion, all the things that we're talking about, immerse yourself in different cultures. How has that helped you as a leader, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, look, I think it's probably in two ways. One way is that you get a greater sense of different people's perspectives when you live in different parts of the world. And when you're able to understand what people are thinking in Hong Kong because you've lived there, or in London, or in Vancouver, or in New York. And so I think the ability to kind of live in different parts of the world and experiencing that in different parts of the world, I think is it just gives, at least has given me, a better appreciation for other people's perspectives and hopefully a better respect and understanding that good people can disagree about things. And it's just really important to listen and to understand rather than just, argue and berate, which we probably have a little bit too much of in the world these days. I think the second thing is probably just a need for reinvention. And that's as much about living in different places as it is about doing different, whether it's, I've had 3 different jobs here at BlackRock. I've had 4 different careers, including BlackRock. And each one of those has required a certain amount of reinvention. And even if you just think about iShares and our index investing area, which I've been leading for the past 4 years, business is totally different today than it was 4 years ago. And it'll be totally different 4 years from now than it is today. And I think that need to keep thinking about what's next and what are the needs that you're not anticipating, that you should be anticipating, and what are the things that are coming that you didn't anticipate and how you adapt to that, whether it's like a war in Europe, which is what we started to experience at the beginning of last year, or a banking crisis, which we're starting to experience at the beginning of this month. These are all things that just, you need to be prepared for. And I think that part of that is just an ability to keep reinventing and keep changing the nature of what you do in order to thrive, both as a leader and I think in the business that you oversee.
It's funny. Real estate, I feel like I'm just a constant reinventor.
Yeah.
And it makes it exciting, right? Like, we do value add, so we're always going in and trying to look at what was there, what the community wants, and deliver that and reinvent and reinvigorate and leave something better than when we left. And with moving around and doing different things, I didn't do as much of it as you did when you were younger and getting through your career, but I always found like putting myself in uncomfortable places, joining new clubs, like learning something new, from going to a public speaking course and getting myself up in front of someone and constantly putting myself in those little pressure points allowed me to always feel that reinvention is a thing that is not easy, but like I'm not scared of it, right? And I think you said that well, the same thing, which is great. So when you're looking for a new opportunity, and this is something for maybe the younger crowd listening to this, what steps do you take to ensure it's the right fit? And the right opportunity could be from a job to a deal to how you even think about what you do every day, right? So what's your process?
So my own process in terms of a new opportunity is, first, it's just talking to a wide variety of people. And one of the things that I try and do in the job that I'm in is not just talk to people within BlackRock, and not even just talk to people who are our clients or could be our clients, financial advisors or other big institutional investors, but also just talk to folks who are in the broader ecosystem. So people who might be in the sales and trading departments of some of our big broker-dealer or banking partners, and how they think about things like ETFs. And they think about it totally differently than our clients might. Sometimes they'll think about it as a threat to the existing way in which bonds are trading. Many of them don't anymore, but that's useful. Or think about new and emerging platforms that are coming up in terms of how they're thinking about getting first-time investors, or how they're thinking about aspects about bond trading, to take the example of bond ETFs, some of these electronic trading venues. But the process is I try and cast a really wide net, and I try and look for people who will have contradictory opinions. Because it's really easy, John, to kind of have your thesis, bond ETFs are great. And then you can certainly seek out a lot of people who believe in your thesis, and it becomes really cozy and reaffirming. The thing I try and do is I try and talk to all the people who have the opposite point of view and really understand why they have it, so that as we're thinking about new opportunities or new areas for the business, we're cognizant of, like, who do we have to convince, or what do we have to do to improve our product if there's a genuine kind of issue around it. And I think that's where a lot of the learning and a lot of the innovation comes from, is in seeking out people who have the opposite point of view. Because even if they're wrong, you now understand where the friction is. And if they're right, you've gotten some great feedback that you can use to improve your process, improve your product, that you wouldn't have gotten if you just spend all day talking to people who agree with you.
It's funny. I am constantly trying to find out why I'm wrong about what I'm thinking. And I think the more you're willing to be wrong, the more you're able to listen and actually, and that doesn't mean I'm going to agree with why someone thinks I'm wrong, but to hear it, to also be good with it, to not make it about you, and to make it about the process of getting to what your view and your answer will be, regardless of what you hear. I think that's a powerful superpower, candidly.
Yeah, it is, but it's something that you have to, at least I've tried to challenge myself to do it, including with my own management team and with clients and with partners and the like, because there's a powerful tendency, you like people who agree with you. It's cozier, it's more comfortable. You can move on to your next meeting more easily. And so you have to seek out people who will disagree with you, or empower people, if they're on your team, to disagree with you. And I think that's a rougher road, because it takes more time. You have to really think about it. You have to elicit it. And sometimes you just want to move on.
Yes.
But you can't. And I think it's an important part of the process. Certainly it's something that I've tried to do. But it requires work, and it requires patience. And you got to build it in, because it's not a natural, like the natural flow is like, oh yeah, John's totally agreeing with me. He's a good guy. And so you need to find a way to do that. You need to find a way to also disagree respectfully with people, particularly if you're seeking out people for the desire and ability to disagree.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll give my view. I'll finish. I'll say, you know what? I could be wrong. What do you think? Like the minute you disengage someone from letting them know that you're okay being wrong, it almost allows people to feel that they can speak their mind more freely. But I think, however you do it, I think it's something very important to learn. So, okay, you're the global head of iShares and index investments at BlackRock. It's been crazy what's going on the last 2-3 years. We're going into this now unknown feeling for a lot of people in the workforce. I mean, this is my third cycle. I'm old, or older, right. I would say. Right. You've been through some cycles. A lot of people aren't going to feel what this feels. What do you think your biggest challenge is going to be as a leader to, have the people that you work with, your team, understand where we're headed, and also just, clients and, just every day doing business?
Yeah, look, I think particularly from the seat that I'm in at the moment, which is, I think a really disruptive technology in all of investment management. I really do think ETFs are that. And I thought that even before I was in the job that I was in. And the challenge becomes, how do we continue to think bigger and think of massive new unlocks? Because even despite, the numbers you cited, the numbers you'll read about in the press, and The ETF business is big across the industry at BlackRock. Indexing is big across the industry at BlackRock. It's still a tiny portion of the overall markets in which we compete. We've got 2% of the total market in relative to bonds. We've got 5 or 6% ETFs as a percentage of the equity market. And so the market is still vast, and the opportunity, as I see it, is still in the ability to grow 2 times, 3 times, 4 times the size of what we are today. And I think the challenge becomes there are so many things that are consuming my morning, my team's morning, this afternoon, this week, and this month. And we absolutely need to deal with current market issues as our clients are experiencing them. That's why they hire us. That's why they pay us. And so being able to deal with and help them migrate through difficult crises, geopolitical issues, and the like, offering more choice with our 1,300 and growing ETF offerings. And as a business, we need to take time and continue to challenge ourselves to think bigger and think of what's the bigger thing that can come up, or what's the next big thing that will double or triple or even more the size of our business. And I think it's really providing the time and the space to focus on the latter when there are so many demands on current events. And I think that's particularly the challenge in a business like ours, which genuinely is and which seeks to be a disruptive technology and a disruptive force in the entire investment landscape, not just in ETFs or not just in indexation.
So interesting, and I agree.
But that's part of the fun of it. Like that, it's a challenge, but it's like it's what makes it's part of the flow, to use your word before, and it's part of what makes the job exciting, I think, for all of us.
No one that I know that's successful, especially with this podcast, talks about the things that were easy and they did well. It's all about the hard things that they got through.
Right.
That's what makes us proud of what we do and helps us grow. And I love that you talk so much about investing as technology. I love technology. I invest in early stage startups. I mostly through real estate, but I've grown that over the years. Aladdin, huge BlackRock,
Absolutely.
important product, right? That's really a difference maker for why you've grown so much. But I think we're going into this new world with, from AI, from ChatGPT, all the different products now they're getting talked about. Where do you see AI playing a role in the future of ETFs? And are we there, or is it just something that I remember when the internet started, right? You didn't really know how or what the use case was. Do you see anything interesting moving forward?
Yeah, it's certainly, and look, we do apply and have applied a lot of AI-based technologies in our quantitative business, in our systematic investing business, on our active platform. And so, the leader of that business, Raffaele, one of my partners, he sort of set up in partnership with Stanford University, an AI lab out there, and there's been a lot of great work and development that's been happening for years, just over in that part of BlackRock. Now, because BlackRock is one firm, and because we operate on a single platform, we get to benefit from a lot of things that are happening all across BlackRock and a lot of innovations that are happening all across BlackRock. And so as you think about the ETF and the index business, there are applications that we're doing to continue to automate and make things like our trading behaviors much more algorithmically driven, and using some of the techniques that our cousins over in our systematic team have done. Also apply that to how we trade and how we apply greater precision to how we track indices. There are other applications that you can think of in terms of AI as just a pure investing area. And so we've got thematic ETFs, which look at advances in robotics and artificial intelligence, for example, that allow a individual investor or wealth manager who wants to track a theme all around robotics and AI as an investment opportunity to do that through an ETF. And then there's a whole series of things, John, that we haven't even dreamed of yet. But you can just, you play around with ChatGPT, and I did play around with the free version that was put out a few months ago, and it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary in so many ways and in so many possibilities that we haven't even kind of dreamed of yet. And the couple of applications that I talked about are things that we're already doing. But the really exciting stuff is the things that we haven't yet thought about that we absolutely will be doing in 2 years and 3 years. And that's part of the need for constant reinvention, because all of a sudden a new technology or new application comes up and you're able to apply it to the business that you do. And because the whole nature of our business in ETFs and indexation is essentially bringing the application of technology and the application of data to investment management. And I think a lot of the work we're doing is blurring the lines between what's historically been called index and what's historically been called active. And there's a lot that technologies like AI can do to make that blurring happen faster and better and more precisely than we would have previously thought possible.
Yeah, I just can't wait to the cloud. If you just look at how we got here, and almost with COVID, it forced everyone into the cloud. A lot of small, mid-sized companies did not go as fast as these large conglomerates like yourselves, and we wouldn't be able to actually get as far with AI if people didn't understand what data meant and how does it have to be stored. And I just can't wait till I can ask my data a question that I have to ask someone else to get that information, or have to go to 4 or 5 platforms to look it up. And that's going to come, but it may take some years, but it's coming, and this technology is going to allow that, which is just incredible. Yeah. So I know you have a lot to do today, but I want to do one last question, because I think it's important. It's like, who shaped your career? If you could say one thing that really shaped your career, you've had a lot of amazing things. Who would that one person be? Yeah, look, I've had many terrific mentors at every stage of my career, and I've been a great beneficiary of that, and hopefully I'm trying to be a mentor to other people to give back to that. But if I think of one pivotal person, I think it would be Charlie Halleck, who was the first employee at BlackRock. He was the co-president of BlackRock. He'd passed away about in 2015. And when when Larry had first offered me the job to join BlackRock, I turned it down. And I'd known Larry and the team here just as a client, because I used to work with them back when I was an advisor. And Larry was very understanding, and he was playing a long game, and Charlie came up to me 2 weeks later, and I was giving a speech at the BlackRock's U.S. Wealth Conference, and he pulled me aside and he asked me, why I was such an idiot. He used more colorful language than that, and then he sat me down and he explained the answer to his own question. And the core of it was that, you can join a firm like BlackRock with, our ambition and our desire to reinvent, and you can change the way in which the whole industry operates. And I think were it not for that impromptu intervention that Charlie had after that conversation, I called Larry back and said, I think I've made a mistake, and he was very gracious about it. I joined the firm, a month later. But that was it changed the course of my career. And there are many different moments in one's career where you have these pivots. And for me, I'll always be grateful that I had a good berating intervention from Charlie back then, which at least for me allowed me to make a better decision than I might have come up with the first time around. Yeah, you could have went fight or flight and said, who the hell is this guy? I don't want to be a part of someone that calls me an idiot, or you weren't afraid to listen. I found it strangely motivating. Which he said would make me a good cultural fit. So it was it's a good lesson. And you sometimes think about mentors, John, as just being the people who to puff you up and are always saying nice things. But at least for me, a lot of my great mentors were people who were who could be quite hard on me.
But you seek out disagreement. You seek out people telling you that you're not, this wasn't quite right, or you weren't thinking about it right. And certainly, I didn't need to seek Charlie out. He sought me out, kind of around it. But that was the moment that came to mind.
That's amazing. I love it. Well, thanks to, look where you are now, and you enjoy it and love it. And I really appreciate you being on this podcast. People are going to get a lot from your story. I personally love it, and I'm so glad we were able to meet. And thank you again very much for being on the podcast.
And thank you for having me here. It's been a great conversation.